I'd like to call the December 1st meeting for the WECM Advisory Committee meeting to order. I'd like to go around and do welcome introductions, and we'll get things started off. Dwayne, why don't we start over there with you?
It's Dwayne Shaw, the technical, I was trying to remember the extended title, Industrial Technologies Department Chair and Coordinator for Technical Dual Credit for Kilgore College.
Good morning. I'm Joe Arrington. I'm from McClendon Community College. I am the Chair of the Division for Human Services and Education Programs.
Good morning. I'm Rhonda Dozier. I am currently the Program Coordinator for Cosmetology, formerly Dean of All Workforce.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Kasparis. I'm the Academic Vice President from Angelina College.
Good morning. I'm Robin Garrett. I'm the Deputy Chancellor of Academic and Student Services for Central Texas College.
Good morning. I'm Joyce Williams, Associate Vice Chancellor for Dallas County Community College District.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Parks. I'm the Dean of Business and Technology and the Interim Dean of Administration at San Jacinto College.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eileen Hamby. I'm the Executive Dean of Career and Technical Education at Navarro College.
Hello, good morning. I'm Olga Valerio. I'm from El Paso Community College. I'm the Dean of Career Technical Education, Advanced Technology Center.
Good morning. Jennifer Myers. I'm the Associate Dean of Workforce Education at Odessa College.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rob Blair, Dean of Technical Education with South Plains College.
Good morning. Cindy Griffith, Vice President for Instruction at Alvin Community College.
Good morning, everyone. Phil Nicotera, Houston Community College, President of Coleman College of Health Sciences.
James Chigwin, Tarrant County College, Associate Professor of Computer Science.
Frank Graves, Dean of Workforce and Public Service, McClendon Community College, and TASTE past President.
I'm Dwayne Hiller, Program Director here at the Coordinating Board and Workforce Education.
Gary Tomerlin, Deputy Assistant Commissioner of Workforce here at the Coordinating Board.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I got a phone call the other night from one of our members on the advisory committee. That was Meghan Eichner. She resigned her position, and I'm sad to say that she resigned her position from here as well. But she did resign from the college that she's at. I'm very sorry to hear that. Meghan will be missed, and everything is all right. But and just very sad to see her go. So she'll be missed. Moving on, let's take a look at the consideration and approval of the minutes from the September 18th meeting. Oh, is that Linda calling in?
That's Linda calling in. Hi, Jeff Parks.
Good morning, Linda.
Else.
Linda, would you like to introduce yourself to the rest of the audience?
Linda Head with Lone Star College.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
So back to the consideration and approval of the minutes from the September 18th meeting.
I move to approve. Eileen Hamby.
Okay.
I second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any comments on the minutes? Oh, hearing none. I'm going to... Gary's doing a little housekeeping here. We appreciate that, Gary. I hearing none. Do I'd like to call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And I guess one thing I want to point out, and at the last meeting, Linda appropriately pointed out that she was on the wrong team, but what I've actually realized, and I think we realized toward the end of the meeting, was that the team numbers were actually wrong. And she was on the right team, but just the wrong team number. I did correct those in the minutes, and I did also correct them in.
Thank you very much, Dwayne.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Okay. On to the next item. Is there any public testimony? Dwayne? Gary? None that you're aware of? Okay, just thought I'd ask. All right, let's move on to the next portion of the minutes or the agenda. The coordinating board update from Gary on programs of study and the baccalaureate degrees.
Well, programs of study, we're continuing to move forward. And, actually Dwayne helped me. Well, we met with plumbing and electrical and pipe fitting one day this week. The past couple of weeks, trying to remember what we've met since we met with y'all. I guess we did HVAC in November. I mentioned plumbing, electrical, and then medical assisting, occupational, no, we didn't do that one, excuse me, respiratory cares. And then on Monday, what do we have Monday? I forget. Don't we have?
That's the plumbing. Oh, next Monday is, I'm sorry. Next Monday is dental hygiene.
Yeah, dental hygiene. And so as I think y'all know, we're working on architecture and construction and all of the programs of study under that career cluster. And then we're also working under health sciences and the disciplines there. And literally we are, well, here, I'll put it this way. Our administrative support staff commented one day this week about can we maybe not do 3 or 4 meetings per week talking about fields of study and programs of study combined, because it's just putting so much strain on getting all of the other work done. And so I guess what I'm trying to explain to you is we are moving forward as fast a pace as we can. And I mentioned this just before we get started. We actually outfitted the room directly above the boardroom. I don't know if you've been up there in meetings, the Lone Star room. It's basically this corner right here. And starting next week, we will be webcasting and broadcasting out of that room. So in essence, we've doubled our capacity for webcasting meetings, and that's one of our biggest hurdles related to moving forward on both programs of study and fields of study is the open meeting requirements that we have to comply with on all of our committees. And so by doing that, that helps. We have 2 positions posted, and we're trying to get those staffed and hired, and that will help us do more program of study work as soon as we get those people on board. And so hopefully by springtime, we can be looking where we are in architecture and construction. I think we're getting close to the end of that one. Health sciences, we still have a lot of work to do, I think. And then we've started preliminary conversations about what career cluster are we going to do next. And I'm not 100% sure exactly where it is. I've got to look at the zip codes with Dwayne. But we're talking about looking at where energy is, meaning more of, I think, process tech and that kind of stuff. And I think some of the SIP codes are in the transportation, distribution, logistics career cluster because of the pipeline, the distribution, if you will. And then I think some of it's in manufacturing. And so we've got to kind of look at that and try to figure that process out. And then, another priority might come up before we get to that point, and so that might change, but that's where the direction we're headed in. Any specific questions about programs of study before I move on to baccalaureate degrees?
Yeah, Gary. Yeah, Gary, I had a question as far as you said there's 2 positions that you are trying to fill. What is the charge of those 2 positions?
Well, they're very, very similar to Dwayne's position. Their program of study, their program director positions. They will have a Perkins portfolio. They will just do general CTE type stuff and some other general kind of stuff, but they're heavy emphasis on CTE workforce. So it'll help us with the program of study initiative. And we've got both of those positions out there as open until filled. And we have a big enough pool of applicants. We're actually going to start looking at those Monday.
Oh, okay.
And hopefully maybe start doing some interviewing and all that kind of stuff. I would maybe even like to, if we have well-qualified candidates, maybe even try to get an offer before the holiday season is 100% upon us. But obviously, as y'all know, y'all probably aren't going to work but 2 more weeks this year yourselves. We're working the rest of the year, just in case you want to know. But anyway.
I am too, so no worries.
Okay. Any other program of study?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yes, Gary, I have a couple of questions on program of study. I do know that Dr. James, Sally K. James at San Jack has been leading the efforts of a crosswalk of apprenticeship programs, since we were talking about that, apprenticeship programs to the WECM and aligning those up with the criteria to be able to award college credit. So as you looked at programs of study, was that given any consideration about the results that she would be producing? And then my concern, and I'll tell you my concern, really is about we're having this initiative over here, and how those things are going to be aligned, and then the courses themselves that are already in the WECM that actually make up the programs of study. So it feels such a disconnect if those things are not there. So I just want to know, from the perspective of the coordinating board, were all of those things brought into this discussion, especially since those centered around HVAC, plumbing, pipe fitting, and a couple of other things like millwright, mechatronics, all of those initiatives, and electrical as well.
Well, obviously, the emphasis of program study is that alignment piece, that commonality piece. We've talked about that extensively. So I know from conversation yesterday that the contract and all that kind of stuff related to that work is in the process, and I don't know exactly where she is in her efforts and her work, but yes, we're concerned about alignment. And Rex and I were actually having some conversation, not about that work, but a couple of other conversations that are going on around the state, to where groups are working independently, disciplines, where there are programs at multiple colleges around the state. They're having conversations, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with those conversations and fold them into the program of study process. And we haven't reached a definitive conclusion yet. I will tell you, we kind of talked about our process, and our process for the programs of study is, we have a large career cluster-based committee, and then that committee names subcommittees. And the subcommittees are composed of faculty, business, secondary, those kind of folks, and they have the conversation about the alignment piece. And so we're trying to figure out how some of these external alignment things fit into that process. And we kind of explored down the road of, well, we really need a subcommittee to look at it. And then, but if we have a group within a discipline that they go out there and look at their courses and they align them, the courses, and they more or less create their own program of study, to name a subcommittee and bring them to Austin and have them convene and do all this kind of process and more or less say, okay, here's the document we came up with, because they already, they already agreed to it 3 months ago, if you will, seems a little bit counterintuitive. And so we've got to figure out how to get all these external kind of things incorporated into it. Our concern is that, as you know, on every one of our agendas, we have that public comment piece, transparency. How do we deal with these issues and make sure that all voices are heard and work that into the mix? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Joyce, this is Linda. I'll have a bit of some comments when it's time for subcommittee reports in regard to that also.
Okay. Just one more follow-up to that. Has there been any thought, as you start to announce and roll out programs of study, that, and I know something always goes out, the announcing what the program and people can nominate, but because you may not be aware of these, and some of them you might be aware of, is to invite those external people who are doing things on the outside, like the group that Dr. James had just pulled together, which were faculty from colleges, which were apprenticeship instructors, and also industry that pulled together to be able to look at it. So it's very similar to look at the crosswalk for credit, because that is something that industry is driving, which is apprenticeship programs, to be able to engage them at the early stages before rolling out, and I hope before we roll out the final products for HVAC, plumbing, pipe fitting, and any of the other construction cluster core programs in the construction clusters.
Well,
So have we given that some thought?
Well, and you know, I mean, yes, we are very concerned about communication. Communication is very important in all of the efforts underway, both program of study and field of study. I do know that there are representatives on this committee, as an example, that are at Sanjak where the work's going on, and so you know, some of the communication has to be more organic than us, you know, reaching everywhere, and so to make everybody aware of the initiatives that are going on. But then, you know, kind of a bit of a conversation, or related conversation, I guess. We've started the process of, I'm not going to necessarily call it a field of study newsletter, but we've decided, and we did the first one late October, early November, we're going to start sending basically a quarterly update about fields of study. What did the board approve? What committees are meeting? Where's their staffing? Where's all the process? What fields of study have been approved? And try to start pushing that to the field. And so as we get a little bit further down the road on the programs of study, we might need to start doing a similar quarterly update or whatever, and push it to the field. And the field of study, we sent it to the, I'm pretty sure we sent it to the presidents and the chief academic officers and the liaisons at all of the institutions. And so we would follow a similar kind of strategy. And I guess maybe from a communication point of view, I will tell you that we're starting to get lots of communications about both fields of study and programs of study, and you know, basically people asking questions, and so I guess our interpretation of that is the field understands that we're working aggressively in this space, and so we understand the importance of communication, and we're working as diligently as we can to facilitate that communication. Obviously, there's not enough of us to talk to everybody every day about every initiative and every conversation about curriculum, but it takes a team, and so hopefully we're doing as much as we can, but we're certainly amenable to ideals.
Other comments?
Is it possible to have the quarterly newsletter just posted on the website, the coordinating board website, for all?
Possibly. I will tell you, we are, you know, I know y'all struggle with initiative fatigue. We also don't lack for projects that we're working on. We are trying to redesign our website, and we're actually trying to have conversations about what is the appropriate information to have on our website, how to organize the website, how to deal with being able to find stuff quickly and efficiently and effectively. There's not a doubt in my mind that both fields of study and programs of study will be important pieces on the website. So exactly, will there be a quarterly newsletter? What will it look like? I don't really know the answers to that right now, but I do understand the importance of communication, and so yes, maybe, if that makes sense. I don't want to commit to something while we're redesigning it, you know what I mean? Did somebody else have a question?
Other questions? Nothing? Gary, you want to talk about baccalaureate degrees?
Yeah, there's been a little bit of conversation about that. No.
Thank you.
Well, Monday, I guess let me try to figure out the dates on this. I think the commissioner, Dr. Gardner, and Rex met with the Texas Association of Community Colleges at their offices. I think that meeting was August 31st, I believe, and a select group of presidents. All the presidents were not in that meeting, and we didn't organize the meeting. We were just guests at the meeting. But they presented kind of an overview of Senate Bill 2118 and We provided a draft copy of the rules for that bill, and we also provided a draft template at that time. Those are on our website. The rules have gone through a few iterations since then. I don't believe there's much in there that would fall into the category of substantive, a little bit of wordsmithing here and there. They went into the registrar, and the 30-day comment period actually ended Monday, and the 27th, I believe it was. And we got, I believe, 6 comments in total, and we have looked at those, and we're have made a few recommendations for changes, but that's in the hand of the board, and calls will look at those week after next, I guess it is. I think it's the 13th or whatever, and then the board will consider them in January. Colleges are beginning to send notifications. This is kind of new for the community college space. Historically, community colleges of getting a program, if it was in your service area, you pretty much, as long as you could demonstrate workforce demand, resources, that kind of stuff, you got the program. Baccalaureate degrees, it's a bit different because it's kind of like, what is the need within the region? And then even more specifically, the bill has specific requirements about agreements with the universities and what is the workforce need and what is the capacity of the existing system. But anyway, from our point of views, the rules and the application process are coming together. We've worked closely with the Board of Nursing. A lot of interest seems to be in the BSN, Bachelor of Science in Nursing. We've worked closely with the Board of Nursing, and actually I think we're meeting with them, I believe the 11th or 12th, so week after next, and they have their application template, and as I said, we have ours. We're trying to make sure that those two things sync up. We want you to be able to use the same information and as much as possible the same format. So what you give to them, hopefully you give the same thing to us without having to reinvent the wheel. And so we're working on that part of it. And lots of inquiries, lots of questions, lots of information. All the colleges that haven't previously participated in a pilot project to offer a baccalaureate degree, you have to also go through a substantive change process with SACS to go become a level 2 institution. And so colleges are working with SACS, and so there's a lot of stuff going on in a very interesting space. And so I guess that's kind of what I've got to say about that. I'll be glad to answer any questions or make an attempt. Or I'll say that Rex will answer it when he gets here. No questions?
Are there questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have some questions.
Then go ahead and ask.
Okay.
We put this on the agenda for a reason.
Great. Gary, just kind of following up on a couple of things that we talked about previously on the baccalaureate program, and they just kind of came up as concerns because, as you say, while community colleges are new in this space, we're actually not new because we do have community colleges in Texas that have baccalaureate programs.
The majority.
Yeah. No, I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying, based on that fact that we do have community colleges that that are offering baccalaureate programs. And one of the things that we've often seen as community colleges across the state and working with transfer universities, there are some concerns about courses being transferable to this university. The same course is not transferable to that university. It's not transferable to that university. And so just kind of looking at the background for the WECM process, which was the manual was created so that courses could be transferable and portable among community colleges. And so as we start to have an opportunity to build baccalaureate programs in this CTE space or in this community college space, we have an opportunity to do it a little bit different, where our courses will be portable. And so my question is going back to something I brought up a couple of meetings ago, was where is the database of courses that the current community colleges that do offer baccalaureate programs, where are those courses so that those courses can be accessible to community colleges who are considering offering similar programs, so that there can be an alignment so that we can then prevent some of the same concerns that we currently now have with transfer universities. So I'm back to asking again that question: where does that data sit, and
Well-
where can it be accessed from other community colleges?
Well, we can probably get a list of it and send it to you, to this group. We can take as a topic of putting it on the website with reservation, because I told you earlier we're redesigning the website now.
Just to say, we do have on the, you're all familiar with the course and program inventory page where you look up your local need courses. There is also a link there for ACGM unique need courses. That is where the TMGT and the 3,000, 4,000 level courses at the colleges offering baccalaureate degrees, that is where they are currently searchable. Again, you can't get all the information, but at least the course title and course numbers are there. So again, it's academic unique need course inventory. It's
So
on that
they're-
course inventory.
So they're listed
link.
under the ACGM side of the house as unique needs.
Right.
Okay, so community
that's-
colleges wouldn't normally look at that part, but okay, gotcha.
And we have had internal conversations and exactly what process to, how to handle those courses.
Gotcha.
And, the concept of if the field is willing to share them, and it seems very logical, quite honestly, of, if you're going to do something in organizational leadership or management or whatever, it seems like that space should have a fairly definitive pathway. So if the field is willing to share those, we have a few ideas that we're working on of how to proceed, but we haven't reached any decisions yet, and maybe at the next meeting we need to have a more definitive conversation about that. Next meeting of this group, have a more definitive conversation about that, and maybe we would be prepared to have some conversations about exactly where they're going to go and how we would share them and make them available and that kind of stuff. And but I do like the idea if the field is willing to share them from college to college, as opposed to, no, our leadership is different than, leadership is different down here in Houston than it is out there in West Texas, and some of that conversation. But we can talk about it in the future, near future.
Gary, I think Joyce is saying that we want to. We don't want to go and reinvent the wheel at every college, especially if a Bachelor of Applied Technology exists somewhere else already. And we would just be proposing, or BSN, we'd be proposing the same curriculum, possibly.
Right.
I have a question about that. So, so when people ask us, this coordinating board considers applied technology and BSN degrees as ACGM, as academic transfer, not as workforce. Is that correct?
Well, I think
that's where you put the classes?
Well, I think the majority of the courses are yes. They're going to be the applied science, the applied technology degrees. I think those courses are going to be considered more workforce type courses. But then the BSN courses, I'm not so sure about that. And I'll tell you that, Rex and I have had a couple of conversations about this, and while the BSN courses may be ACGM type courses, but it is a certain amount of a conversation of, well, if all the other courses are workforce type courses, do you really want to segment those over there and these over here? But, you know, we are exploring an option and working with our IT folks. You know, we've had a preliminary conversation about possibilities there. And so, you know, we do like the idea of sharing them. It would make it easier on y'all, it would make it easier on us. And we just have to figure out a place to put them without creating another separate process that, you know, requires 17 people to manage or whatever. So, you know, whatever we do, it's got to be efficient for y'all and efficient for us. But maybe this is something we need to come back and revisit. And obviously, we have been very busy since session was over, getting the rules drafted, doing the communication, getting the application form done, all of those pieces of trying to get this stuff operationalized. And now we're almost to the point of getting it ready to, okay, now let's start getting applications, let's start reviewing them, let's start dealing with the pieces of it. And so we haven't had as much time on this task as we need to give it yet. But I do think it's a very important conversation. I'm glad this conversation that y'all are talking about it amongst this committee and talking about it amongst yourself of the concept of sharing as opposed to going and creating X number of individual courses. So we can continue to talk.
Just to follow up, Gary, so we can make sure that there's consistency of communication. You mentioned the nursing program, of whether it would be on the workforce side or some of those at the higher level, junior and senior level, would actually be on the, more than likely be on the academic side. Well, excuse me, not academic, because I think all programs are academic, but be on the more liberal arts side of the house. Actually, that happens now because, as you know, the field of study of nursing has the same rubrics as the WECM courses that are there. So it already sits on both sides of the house. And so I think most colleges understand that they sit on both sides of the house. And that's a decision that they have to do. So I don't think you're going to have any problem with them being able to sit on both sides of the house.
Well, I will tell you that whenever Rex and I were kind of having that conversation, it's like, well, you know, if we put them all over here with these other courses, our contention can just say that we're making it convenient for y'all. But I'll tell you that my thought process is really and truly about getting them all in one place, under one management structure, under one process, is the best way for us to deal with it. And so, as I've said, you know, yeah, we understand that conversation. I think the most important thing is the community college is willing to share and thinking that sharing is important. You know, we agree, and so we just have to figure out how to deal with it.
Other questions?
I just wanted to talk about reinventing the wheel here a little bit because about a year and a half ago I came up from Florida, and Florida, all 28 community colleges in the state system now have baccalaureate degrees, and I was a vice president of baccalaureate studies, and Florida went through the substantive change and with SACS and all that. But there's such a wealth of information out there as far as programs go. We were only allowed so many programs in the state of Florida, too. We started out really small, and I know where I was, we had 12 baccalaureate programs by the time I left. So there are many, you know, and we pretty much followed the same model. You know, just minor tweaking here and there, and it's pretty consistent across the board. So if you wanted to take a look at that, and they have it all under baccalaureate degrees on the state of Florida Department of Education website. And I know, you know all about the Community College Baccalaureate Association, and one of your, I know Richard Jolly ran that for years. So just something to look at if you're looking at curriculum. there's a lot of other places that have worked on this. Instead of reinvent, we don't have to have we can have like a national model more than the Texas model, Florida model, whatever model.
And, I know you're talking about Florida, but just perhaps for the good of the order, community colleges in Texas are limited to 3, with the exception of the 4 legacy colleges, which can have 5. And I think Mike Hansen out of Michigan is the current chair or whatever of the Community College Baccalaureate Association.
Other questions or comments for Gary on the baccalaureate degree option? Okay. Gary, do you have anything else as far as coordinating board update?
Well, maybe just to comment in general, I have to leave at noon today. And so if you want me to answer anything, or if you want to pick on me about anything or anything, you only have until noon, Joyce.
Wow, he just singled somebody out.
It's fine, I can take it.
You love the attention.
Obviously I'll answer any questions about anything y'all want to talk about. And I guess maybe a bit of an update. We're in the process of redesigning the submission portal, the log-on process, and the log-on part is in the test phase now, I believe.
Yeah, and it's actually probably going to be rolled out within the next week or so. And what it is, when you go to the inventory access and update, it'll tell you to sign in with your CB password. If you have a CB password, you just need to request access to that application. I think it's called the WECM, Workforce Education Course Manual spelled out. But if you don't have a CB password, then there will be instructions on how to apply for one. And that, again, it's based individually. Each individual will have one. And again, it's tied to whatever college you're at. And that will give you access to, the different applications. We have the, core curriculum, Perkins, several applications that are accessed by CB password or will be soon. So if you have a CB password, it'll just be a matter of requesting access to the inventory. And if you don't, then there'll be instructions on how to sign up for one.
Can you give a general overview of what is being modified?
Most of it is internal to us. It has to do with aspects of how WECM functions internally, other than the CB Pass logon piece. I'll try to do the brief version of this. There's actually there's 2 WECM databases right now. There's the current database you search, and then the program inventory piece actually works out of the old legacy WECM database, and Dwayne has to manually update that. And so as part of this migration, we're moving towards a unified logon, as Dwayne kind of said, to where you'll eventually log on one place and get access to whatever applications you need. And eventually is a long time, just to clarify that. All this won't be done next month. But you'll log on to one place, you'll get access to whatever it is you need access to. But from your point of view and the program submission point of view and some of that kind of stuff, you won't see a whole lot of difference in functionality.
The look and feel is going to be approximately the same.
Yeah, and then the WECM search page that's out there now, there's nothing changing there. Yeah, there's no changes going on there, so it'll be largely transparent to y'all. But internally, it's like 9 databases and 17 applications, and maybe not quite that, but it does seem like that. It's literally been about a 6-month process, maybe.
So far,
yeah. So far. So I mean, it's.
And I know Joyce has a question. She may not have it in her mind yet, but she does.
No, I got it in my mind. Is this
yes, this will also accommodate the district approval process.
That was my question. That was my question.
This is something we'll probably need you to check and verify to make sure it's working correctly, but we'll have different, I guess, user roles is how we do it. And then so somebody at the campus will have one user role and they can submit to the district, and then someone at the district will have the user role that they can submit to the coordinating board. So that has been implemented into it. But basically, the look and feel will be the same as the inventory access and update or the new system. So if, I know some colleges are still using the old system because they're so familiar with that, but that one's going to be going away, and it'll all be the new inventory access and update type application.
Thank you, Dwayne. I'm sure that Don Perry, if he's watching, would probably have just started texting me right away to say, ask that question. So that is exactly what I had my mic on to ask.
We actually labeled the button the Don Perry button.
Exactly, exactly. I do have a follow-up question to this, and it's about WECM as well. Because, we've been getting lots of, well, I wouldn't say lots, but we've been getting several WECM comments from the field. And because of the fact that they're wanting to do new courses, whether that's in drones, whether that's in all of these other things. And so they've been having some concerns about us not being responsive to their needs about creating new courses. And that's probably because our whole process has changed. So again, I think the field probably may not understand how that part of the process has changed.
Who is they?
People who are sending in the welcome comments.
Right, and yeah, we do. Yeah, we do
Dwayne
have.
and I have been communicating a little bit about that.
Right, and again, working to get this new process up to date is taking a lot of my time, and
Yeah.
I do have kind of a backlog, and doesn't normally take more than a week to respond to a WECM comment. But like I said, once I get this out of the way, then we will be responding to those.
Yeah, and maybe
so far
those
it's
two
about,
people that Gary's hiring that's going to do general stuff
Sure.
can start looking at answering and helping with the welcome comments as well, because a lot of them do know that we're on this committee, so we do get those emails that say, what's going on, I haven't gotten this, and I'm always pushing them to go to the welcome comments. And so, yeah.
And just to clarify, I've got about 6 comments that I'm
Right.
working on, and 2 of them are, why haven't you responded to my previous comment?
Right, exactly,
So-
exactly.
Well, you
But-
responded to mine, Dwayne. You did take care of me. Thank you for that. And that was one of the items that I was going to ask about. It's a pending item in the protocol manual, was the exact protocol for the comments and inputting that. So we'll get to that when I start talking about that.
I just wanted to make sure that I honored Gary's request to get all of my questions to him before he leaves.
And I appreciate that, Joyce. But as Dwayne said, he has 6 comments, and 2 of the comments are about when you're going to answer my question. And so we have 4 comments total. And so as we've discussed this migration and where we're going and what we're doing, yes, keeping courses current, relevant, and all that kind of stuff is very important, but let's make sure that we express it, that there's not a flood of comments out there, and that we have 3,000 or 9,000 or whatever number of courses that are old and obsolete and out of date and that kind of stuff. From the program of study committees, respiratory therapy, I think it was, I don't remember what group it was, but as part of them completing their process, we explained, we're moving away from the time-bound process of reviewing these every 4 years. So while you're here as a program of study, if there are any changes to this sequence of courses that y'all need to discuss, now's your time to do that. They had no comments. And of course, we encourage, let's avoid wordsmithing just for the sake of, fixing stuff. If it's missing of this, if it needed something substantive, let's fix it. And so, as I have said previously, I believe the vast majority of our courses are pretty mature, pretty well defined, pretty robust, but yes, we do need to figure out how to capture new stuff as we need it. We have a comment, I don't know where Dwayne has it on the agenda, but under truck driving, there's legislation this year that was signed that requires all commercial truck driving programs to include information about
So recognizing trafficking.
Right. human trafficking.
and prostitution.
Prostitution.
Human
Right. And so that probably needs to be added to the course, probably needs to be a discussion for this group of, I don't know that we need to put a legal reference in a course description, something like, subject to whatever the statute that it wrote into, blah, 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 you have to do this. But maybe a learning outcome needs to be added, seems appropriate to me. And I think that we just need to take it under advisement and then make that as an editorial to that course. But I think y'all should discuss that. I don't necessarily think we need to convene people from the truck driving programs and have a discussion about a legal requirement, because it has to be done.
Right. I just wanted to also say this. It's not about the number of comments. It is about the fact that the community college's mission is to respond to employers as quickly as possible. So regardless of whether it was one comment or 25 or 30, having a person who is waiting to receive information on a new course for 30 to 45 days is, regardless of how many of comments those were. So Dwayne has been working on that. I think as you look at hiring new people, that may be one of the options of being able to look at that. As you've said, one of the triggers for responsiveness to industry is that the community colleges this comment phase is set up to be able to do that. Moving on to something that is also, Mr. Chair, if I may, is also in line with industry and looking at how we're being responsive to industry. Could you give us an update, if you have one, on the McDonald's initiative that the coordinating board is working with?
I don't think I really have an update. I know that we're meeting, I believe, one day next week.
Monday. It's meeting on Monday.
Okay, then maybe I'm not meeting Monday because I think I have, I know it's on my calendar, but I also know that I have several other meetings Monday. I know I have a meeting at the Railroad Commission. I don't know. Anyway, so what time are we meeting Monday? Do you know?
10 o'clock.
10 to 3:30.
We have a program of study meeting scheduled at 10 o'clock Monday, right? Anyway.
That's usually a safe statement to make, and just any day of the week, and say, we have a program of study meeting that day, don't we? Sure.
If I can't find a meeting to attend, I'm doing something wrong. That's just about all I can tell you. Rex or I will, well, no, Rex is at Saks Monday. Obviously, I'm scheduled to be at least two places at the same time on Monday morning, because I know that meeting, and, Jeff, since you know the meeting is Monday at 10, you apparently are more, and or Joyce, I don't know if you're attending as well, y'all are apparently more up to date on it than I am at this point. I know that there's several different employer organization groups that have kind of been brought into it, and it's discussion about trying to get a common sequence across the space, I think. But
I'll provide some input. The initial charge of the McDonald's mapping was to take courses that McDonald's currently has and they're offering and provide an opportunity to map over to WECM courses. There was a meeting back, when was that? September, maybe?
September.
Yeah, it was in September. And that was the initial meeting to talk about, is this something that would be worthwhile? And then we went through some processes on having that conversation with several colleges from the North Texas area. And I was also at that, it was sent out to colleges across the state. And I also attended. During that conversation, we were trying to help everyone understand that we don't necessarily want to just form a set of courses or do mapping to only one industry. We wanted to see this more of a industry-wide, available to all industries. So that has been opened up. So the meeting on Monday will include other industry individuals that will be there to talk about what their needs are And then part of that process will be also facilitating the group to start to look at courses. And in a conversation that I had just the other day with Christine Hubbard, which is leading it up with Tracy, what we're going to look at is almost similar to the model that we had when we did the health science area. I said, you know, what will happen is as we start to have these discussions, people will get very close to courses from their particular community college. You know, this is what we do. This is how we do it. And I said, you basically have to go through those 5 stages of grief to get everybody to understand we have to work together as a state to be able to offer something that is going to be worthwhile to everybody if we're going to develop some certificate, for instance. And so we'll go into that process and have people start to identify courses and look at what those courses may be that would work with what the skill sets are for the particular employers across the state. And so we'll start working on that on Monday. And that's kind of the where we're at this point, and that's what I can give you.
If I can make a comment, this
Certainly.
is something that's been going on for a long time. We tried to do the same thing with Walmart, Ford Motor Company, and through the skills grants, and we just could not figure out how to allow them credit for the millions of dollars of training that they invest in their employers. So I commend y'all for that, because I tell you, as dean, it was a challenge, and it was really sad to say, sorry, we can give you training, but we're not going to be able to give you credit.
Right. Right, and I do believe that is one of the challenges in working with Sally Kay on the apprenticeship Perkins Leadership Grant that she was heading up. You know, there were certain stipulations that were put into that with the that apprenticeship aspect with the DOL to say that you basically have to have all of the training completed in order to even start to talk about doing some articulated credit back to the institution. And I think that needs to probably be part of the discussion as well, because I think trying to map directly across is going to be a tremendous challenge. And I don't know if it's even possible. So I think that's something that we're going to have to continue to work on. But having some stipulations of how and what the individual would have to complete before we can start even offering some of that credit, because in some cases we may not have all the skill sets that would match to a particular course, or vice versa, and that's going to be the challenge.
Also, I think we have to consider the length of time, because McDonald's is looking at 10 years, whenever 20 years, whenever, all of those other things that they're looking at. And so we have restrictions based on the fact of how long it has been since a person has taken a certain course, because we change and update that, and we should. So those are clarifications, I think, that we have to make sure that are there as well. So I just wanted to know, because of the fact that the coordinating board has basically taken the charge of this, along with the NTCC, and become the driver of this instead of the field becoming the driver, but the decisions will be made at the college of which credits will be awarded.
Other questions? Cindy?
I have one, and this may cross over into the Guided Pathways Subcommittee, so forgive me, or Linda, stop me. But if you could, Gary or Dwayne or both, explain to us within the POS committee their curricular decision process. I want to give us an example, the one for drafting, because for drafting, a 1309, 1409 course that's one of the most commonly offered courses throughout all of the colleges that offer that program was not included in the POS. And also, mechanical drafting class was included in that. And there may be, but I don't know of any of our college programs that are offering that. And so if you could just kind of give us information on how those decisions are made.
Well, let me go first, and then Dwayne, I guess my question to you on the the 1309, 1409, was that one of the 4 courses that they combined?
Right. And what they found was there were like 4 courses that basically had the same outcomes, but so what they did was kind of combine them all into one course, probably 1305. And just another note, I mean, the intent wasn't to eliminate courses from colleges, ability to teach them, just because they're not in the program of study, because the program of study is not the full 45 hours and then the 15 hours of general ed. So it's not the full 60 hours. So colleges still have some leeway in what other courses they offer. So just because the course isn't in the program of study, again, we want to look at the courses that are in the program of study and see if there's a suitable replacement. But if a course isn't in the program of study, that doesn't exclude the college from offering that.
But hang on. When the 4 courses, when they wrote the one, or they revised 1305/1405 to include the other learning outcomes, they recommended the archiving of the other 3, didn't they?
Right.
And what
so
it is, hang on, let me do it from here. And what it is the program, the program of study committees are doing what we haven't historically done at WECM. We're asking to look at the redundancy. And the faculty members on that committee said these 4 courses are essentially the same. And the faculty members said, let's take these 4 and write 1. And so, as I recall the conversation, there was a bit of, some of the courses had more of an emphasis on hand drawing, and some of the courses had less emphasis on hand drawing and more on automated AutoCAD, or perhaps even one of the courses maybe had no mention of hand drawing or whatever. And so the conversation was, if we just put a little bit of something, and I don't remember what it is without having the information in front of me, but they, the committee, with business and industry guidance, said these 4 are really 1. And then they picked 1305, if that's what it is, and then recommended the other 3 for archiving. And then again, the committee said that everybody needs a dose of mechanical. And
I'm sorry, I'm just.
Go ahead, Joyce. I know you're dying to ask a question that I'm going to ask.
I just can hardly breathe on this question. So are we saying that the coordinating board then moved to archive those 3 courses?
Yes.
Well, that was put out for
Effective-
public comment for,
Yeah.
Effective,
well, it'd be,
After
it hasn't
adoption.
been approved yet, so it'd be about 2018, fall of 2018.
After adoption. Fields of study advisory committees can make recommendations to ACGM courses. New courses, like in architecture, we created the 2nd-year design studio courses. And program and study committees can make recommendations to WECM courses, including archiving.
so I'm going to go back to the WECM process, as you said that it didn't look at duplication of courses or redundancy. And just a little bit of correction on that. There was that. We also looked at, but it was based on different factors that included some of the information that Cindy just talked about, was looking at the number, the frequency in which courses were taught, how they were offered. All of that was looked at prior to looking at a deletion of a course that was being taught widely at a number of colleges. So if you have a committee of 14 colleges that are representing 52 college districts, then I am assuming that prior to the coordinating board making a decision to delete 3 courses that may have been widely used among those colleges based on frequency of reporting that data, as well as creating a new course based on the lack of frequency of somebody being offered.
Hang on a second.
I'm just a little bit concerned.
I don't think they
about
created
that.
a new course. Didn't they add to 1305, an existing course?
Now, the mechanical course, you added that too?
No, 1305 is a foundational basic
No, I'm talking about
drafting
the
course.
mechanical course you
The
just
mechanical
talked
course
about.
is an existing course that they added to the program of study.
And I think Cindy asked about two different courses, 1409, and then mechanical, I think, is 23 something. And so there are about 3 or 4 courses at the beginning of the drafting rubric. Apparently 1305, apparently 1409, 1309, 1409, 1311, 1411, I think might be one of them. But the faculty, and so we talked about the Program and Study Committee, and you said 14. I don't remember how many
No,
faculty.
just the reason I said 14, because in the past, you've mentioned the number 14 colleges versus 7 that we've had at the working workshop. So that's the only reason the 14 came.
But my point is that faculty have always made the decision, and faculty made the decision about the program of study, and they collectively said these 4 courses are essentially the same. And if we're ever going to move to a higher level of commonality, as we have discussed for the past couple of years, there are going to have to be some courses that are archived. Just a second, Cindy, if I can, please. The respiratory therapy group, I think it was, they talked about they had found out fundamentals 1 and 2 and procedures 1 and 2, I believe it was. And the faculty said, these are the same courses. Half of us use these and half of us use those. And so to your point, Joyce, if we're going to accomplish what we have discussed, yes, some heavy use courses are going to be archived because they basically duplicate each other. And maybe they're not 100% duplicates, but the faculty that are looking at this said, well, it's 95%, it's 80%, it's whatever. And by adding this, then it becomes that. And as an example, in a drafting course that has something about hand drawing and AutoCAD, as you know, there's nothing about time on task. And so if you do 80% of the semester with old school board drawing and only 20% of the semester with AutoCAD, or vice versa, or any combination of that, you've met the course description and then, of course, the learning outcomes, as long as you've covered the learning outcomes. And I would assume the learning outcomes in a drafting course are not software or pencil dependent. I would assume the learning outcomes are, be able to draw shapes and line width and depth and stuff like that. But I'm not a draft person.
Mr. Chair, so that we won't make assumptions about what's happening, is there any way that we can ask the coordinating board to share the comments that the faculty from the POS committee is making decisions on based on those comments? Because I'm sure they get the comments, whether it's 95% or 85% of this course, that to have those comments at least shared with this committee.
To this committee. I think that's
so
a good
that we
recommendation.
can have a copy of those comments that are shared.
All of the meetings are webcast and they're archived on YouTube, and you're welcome to go watch them. We don't transcript all the meetings.
You don't transcript as far as, you don't put minutes together for the meetings?
Yeah, we put minutes together that encaptures the global thought of these 4 courses are really one course, something like that.
We'd like to have a copy of those minutes.
We don't go in and say that this is 87%.
Do we put the minutes as well on the website?
I think we're putting the minutes for the programs of study on the website. But yeah, we can give you the minutes, but the minutes don't capture, that it would take us, transcribe this meeting.
But based on those comments, there's decision-making that's happening. That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
What is committee to understand and have that when those decision-making is happening that will impact a number of community colleges around the state?
Yeah, and once, as Dwayne kind of said, once everything is finished and adopted and things are recommended for archiving, or addition, inclusion, that information will be pushed to the field and the dates will be made available.
But I think back to Cindy's point, where is WECM and the advisory committee part of the process?
Right.
Because what's going to happen in some cases is we could be changing courses and the advisory committee knows nothing about it, and we're like,
Which advisory committee?
The
WECM or
advisory
program
committee.
study?
The WECM advisory committee.
Probably less than 1% of the WECM courses are under the purview of programs of study at this time. You know, the vast majority of WECM courses, everything except for the few health science disciplines that we've looked at and the architecture and construction career cluster stuff that we've looked at, you know, those are the only areas that are being looked at. And of course, I mentioned earlier the truck driving thing. And so,
and
as
those
part,
are and those are the areas that we're talking about.
well, and as I've said, programs of study committees can make recommendations for course changes. Then it will go to the larger committee. And then once everything is approved at, you know, because the program of study groups are subcommittees of the larger committee, the Architecture and Construction Career Cluster Committee, right? And then same thing for health sciences. And so as those groups make their recommendations, and then it goes back up to the larger committees, and those committees eventually make their recommendations, they'll go to the board. Once everything is approved, all the changes will be made public, and, you know, dates will be made available, and all of that kind of stuff. And
Is there somebody that serves from this group on the program of study committee?
no, I mean, y'all can nominate yourself if you're a subject matter expert. I mean,
We have an approval going to the board, and we're not engaged in part of that process before it goes to the board of those decisions that have been made about WECM courses?
Just let me make a comment.
Okay.
I oversee drafting, and for me I was shocking when they told me was eliminated 1309, because that's the most that we offer, even as a dual credit. And the recommendation for my institution was to include 4 courses or 3 courses that I believe that they're going to be helpful for my discipline. I include that one, but my concern is like everybody. We eliminated a class that almost everybody offered, and I don't understand that we are combined courses, mechanical, hand drawing, we don't use anymore, to be honest. That's okay, that combination. However, I believe it, we should to review the outcomes, maybe to review the objectives to be more upgraded, but no eliminated just because eliminated. Because now, I mean, honestly, I'm in a big trouble, because that's 1309 is the one of the class that the most I offer, even for the higher schools. And
okay, yeah.
That's a problem.
Well, the faculty experts looked at, and I don't have this in front of me, and maybe we need to bring it back the next time this group meets. They looked at the 4 courses, you know, 1305, 1309, and the other 2 iterations of whatever they are, and they, the faculty, said these courses are the same. Structural.
Gary, how many were there? How many participated in that particular one, for instance?
I think somewhere on the order of 12 to 14, Linda.
Oh, that's a good number.
And they said, the faculty, business and industry provided input. I remember in the drafting that business and industry commented a lot about blueprint versus plan reading, and I believe one of the things, and I'm just giving you an example of input, but they, the faculty, said, you know, these 4 courses are the same. All we need to do is, and I don't remember if they changed the course description a little bit, if they changed the learning outcomes a little bit. I don't remember if each of the 4 courses used 3 learning outcomes that were the same, and then they all had a independent kind of another one, and somehow or another they put those together. But the faculty said, we can all use this course and meet the needs of our programs. And as has always been the case with WECM, a small group represented the state. And in the program of study, as I've said, I believe we used a larger group than what WECM historically has used. Most WECM teams were somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 people per discipline, and I was part of WECM before I came here. And we are going to staff the program of study committees as large as we get nominations up to the statutory limit of 24. Now, that does not mean there's going to be 24 community college positions, because by statute, there has to be community colleges, public ed, secondary, business and industry. And so, you know, we're working to balance those committees. Quite honestly, HVAC, I think we only got 8 nominations or something in that ballpark. And so these changes are going to be happening. They've been discussed. It's statute. We're moving down the road, but the decisions are being made by faculty. And just for the record, I don't know exactly where respiratory therapy is. Dwayne, did they recommend archiving either procedures 1 and 2 or fundamentals 1 and 2? What did they do with that?
I'll have to look it up.
You know.
And like I say, you know, we have these, we can look up the status of these, like a lot of these haven't gone to the committee yet, to the Program of Study Advisory Committee yet, so they're not up for comments yet. But we'll look up the status, you know, where each of these programs is in the process.
To involve us in part of the process, can you make sure that any action items that are being taken forth to the program of study come to this group as well?
Right, and we can make that as a public document.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes.
A couple things came to mind. In the process of selecting faculty from the nominations, is there a protocol for that to ensure that representatives from across the state are included? Does the program of study have a protocol for that selection, or other steps that involve the program of study? And then, of course, we're including program of study in our protocol manual. Does the program of study have a manual that includes WECM leadership, or WECM advisory, I'm sorry, as part of that?
Okay. Your first question about selection. When we send out the nomination process for all of our initiatives, we send it as widely and as broadly as we can. Then, in the case of the programs of study, we're working with TEA. We send it to TEA. We send it to the Texas Workforce Commission. Texas Workforce Commission sends it to the local workforce boards. TEA sends it to the regional education service centers. And we disseminate it as widely as we can. Our basic operational premise is that we want the committees to stay about 50%, or maybe I should say at least 50% community and technical colleges, and then perhaps 50% of secondary business and industry. It depends on the nominations we get. As I said, in HVAC, we got 8. And then we go in and we start trying to look geographically of large college, small college, the 4 corners of the state, and all of those kind of factors to make sure that we cast as broad and as wide of a net as we can. You know, in a field of study example, architecture, as I recall, we got extensive communication in field of study. I think I said that. We got extensive community college nominations, but by statute, fields of study says that it's got to be composed equally. And so I think there are 7 architecture programs at the university level, bachelor's or master's level. And so that limited it to 7 community college folks. And so there's factors like that. To your second question, statute does not speak to the WECM leadership committee or anything else about programs of study. It talks about how the committees need to be composed and that kind of stuff, and then what the committees are supposed to do. It doesn't talk about, you know, WECM leadership, and so that's kind of how we do it. You know, WECM, this committee, the course review process. As we move further and further down the road and we establish more programs of study, there will be more programs of study course revisions over time.
But follow-up to that. So as the actual procedure that's followed that you've kind of outlined with it going from the committee to the advisory group and so on, at what point does that, as we've said, come to us, and then does that group take into consideration the frequency? So rather than choosing 1305 to be the one that they keep, shouldn't they look at the frequency across the state and say, well, maybe we should keep 1309 and add a couple learning outcomes to that?
And what I was asking Dwayne, and I asked why they apparently kept 1305 instead of 1309.
And they do look at the frequency.
They do.
And so
enrollment frequency.
1305 apparently,
Okay.
from what Dwayne is telling me, was the heavy hitter, and 1409, and so one of them apparently is 52% and one of them's 48%, or something like that. You know, maybe it's 60-40, and actually with it being 4 courses, you know, I probably ought to do other numbers to where it was like 37, 33, 25, 22, or whatever adds up to 100. And so they looked at all of that. They said these 4 can actually merge into one. And actually, I was kind of like going, okay, wait a minute. Because I thought they were first talking, take these 4 courses and create 2 courses. And they're like, no, it's 4 into 1. And so, I mean, I don't know, maybe if you want to read, you know, pull up the first 4 courses and look at the words in them and try, but I'm not enough of a draftsman to know, so.
So what is the process then for the comments? So this decision goes up the chain and to the Program Study Advisory Committee, it's decided, then it goes out for comments? And what are you going to do? What if all 50 community colleges come back and say, no, you can't delete 1309? What, just as an example, what are you going to do with that feedback?
Yeah, the process is, once it goes to the advisory committee submits it to the board, the coordinating board, as a recommendation, and that's the point where it goes out to public comment. And we do look at the public comments, and at 50 community colleges all send in comments saying, we use this in other programs, not just in drafting. You know, we will look at that and we will, you know, take those into consideration.
But, you know, as we discuss this, you know, I mean, we have talked about that there's going to be courses that, you know, are going to change. So if we would have, if they would have written the changes into 1309, into 1305, the colleges that are using 1305 would be the colleges that are being vocal instead of the colleges that use 1309. But apparently, you know, the courses are considered highly redundant. The faculty said these courses are highly redundant. As I shared with you in respiratory therapy, they talked about they have procedures 1 and 2 and fundamentals 1 and 2. And they talked, are you familiar with those courses? And that they said they're the same. They also talked about, and maybe this was respiratory therapy and maybe it wasn't because I've been to so many of these meetings, I forget what it is, but somebody had a pulmonary course, a cardiopulmonary course, and a cardiopulmonary testing course. And they said that really, and I go, okay, so if I understand this correctly, y'all telling me this is a Venn diagram to where pulmonary is here, cardiopulmonary is there, and cardiopulmonary testing's there. And they're like, yeah. And I believe the group decided they needed cardiopulmonary testing and recommended the other 2 to be archived, but don't take that as definitive. But my point to you is faculty, as large a team as we can put together, are engaging in the conversation. And if we're ever going to move towards commonality, yeah, some catalogs are going to have to be changed if fundamentals 1 and 2 are archived. In theory, half of the college will have to adopt procedures 1 and 2, and if it went the other way, the other half will have to change.
Gary, I think part of in listening to this dialogue as we've had it over the last few minutes, I think the biggest concern is the lack of communication with everybody, including this committee, because of the fact that we feel our charge is to oversee the WECM, and when we're making course changes and we know nothing about it, it's about that communication aspect. And early on today, you talked about how you want this committee to be assisting in communication on various aspects of what we do. And, well, we can't provide that communication if we don't know about the items.
As Dwayne has said, we've changed no courses yet. The only course change that we really want to discuss today is the truck driving one that I kind of spelled out earlier. The program of study process, as it goes through its iterations, you know, there will be, you know, the information will be presented to you. And then the dates and all that kind of stuff. But the committees, the program of study committees are being challenged to look at courses and look at alignment and look at commonality. There's going to have to be changes.
I don't think there's a problem with the. Nobody's concerned about the changes. What they're concerned about is the timing of the communication. Is what I believe in listening to the individuals on this panel. It's really the timing of that. And so when we have the timing, it's basically after the fact. This is what we're going to do, and we get the information at that point. It's like we're out of the loop completely.
Okay, and we
just want to I guess point it out, and we didn't say this in the coordinating board update, but most of you probably already know Elizabeth Steele has taken a new position here at the coordinating board in the auditing office. She had a lot of, she did a lot of work with about half of the programs of study, and I guess my point is we have been kind of deluged with trying to get the right communications out, trying to get the minutes ready, trying to get the meetings together and everything like that. And again, once we get more staff, it'll be a lot easier. But we do recognize that we are kind of maybe falling a bit behind on the public notifications, as you can say, the communication with the public.
Okay.
And that is something we will be working on to get more information out quicker, both to this committee and to the general public.
Okay.
I think the other question is the one that started this conversation from Cindy Griffith, I think is who posed it, is we don't know the process. And so if this group doesn't know the process, we can't help support the process.
Right.
And so that was kind of the first question. And so that would be real helpful. And then the second one is when we get to it, our subcommittee is also proposing that the items for change come through this committee before it goes to the board, the bigger board, so that we can give our input as professionals for workforce in the state. And Gary, it sounds like you don't want that.
No, I don't.
We do have it in a proposal. So when we get to that, we don't have to talk about that right now, but it is in our proposal from a subcommittee.
It's not so much that I want or don't want, but y'all understand the program of study process. We've talked about it, and we've done this committee as part of that transition, right? If we bring groups together to talk about commonality, alignment, and that kind of stuff, and they recommend tough decisions, such as combining 4 courses into 1, and therefore archiving 3, are we going to have, and I pose this almost as a theoretical or rhetorical kind of question, are we going to have another committee say, no, let's undo that because that's painful?
I don't think so. I think so what we should to do it is to study the 3 courses like this committee and then maybe move, because we have to be upgraded, like you say, with the industry and with business. No, we are not opposing to that one. The idea here is how it's going to affecting. We are not opposing. No way. I believe it to make a change is great because everything is changing in drafting. However, I believe before taking a decision, it has to learn to us to know. We don't oppose it, and we are not going to say maybe no. We are going to study what are you proposing to us from another subcommittee. I mean, I don't see any problem, but we wanted to actually to have what is the process that you follow up, maybe to have it in writing and maybe to have a little bit more communication, because the idea is not to opposing. That's not the idea. It's to be aligning with the business. That's the idea.
And if we're part of the revision process, deleting courses is revision. And so if we are part of approving the revision of courses, to delete, to say you're going to move toward deletion after you make the comment, or the recommendation is going to go to the board to delete these courses, and we have not been communicated, and that's our role, that's a revision. So I'm not understanding that lack of communication when that's supposed to be part of our mission. I'm sorry, Joe.
Joe's been patiently waiting over here for a comment, and everybody's very excited about this conversation. Well, Joe, go ahead.
Folks, step back for a moment, and let me ask about 4 specific things. I'll try to be as quickly as I possibly can. First, yes, I get that we're early in the POS formation and process, and whether it's 1% or hypothetical number doesn't matter. We're starting down a road, and if we build the road the way we don't want it to go, then we're doomed to either have to continue down a bad road or have to rebuild it later. It behooves us to fix whatever we see as issues now, while it is small. Was it just last week that nominations were taken for, 12, 13 other areas?
Those are fields of study.
Okay. All right.
And it's not, well, we did extend a group of 5 another week, and then we have the other group out, but those are fields of study.
Then I had the numbers backwards, but there was an expansion of the POS program there. So
No. We
field of study program.
We have no program of study nominations out right now.
Okay. Whichever way we're going down this, we need to do it right up front, so it's a road we want to continue when it gets bigger and better down the road. Second thing, I kept looking, and I couldn't find our recreation documents and what the specific statement of our mandate and relationship to the WECM manual was. My recollection mirrors what I just heard here, is that we had the function of making sure that the quality control of WECM continued to exist. I am concerned that, is that a question that needs to be addressed? Is the whatever changes following the same quality control process? Remember, we had the protocol set up for here's what a good course description should look like, here's what a good learning outcome should look like, and I've not heard that that's been addressed here. Lastly, I get that the rule that set up the studies programs may not have specifically included reference to WECM, this group, but it didn't preclude it, did it?
No.
Okay. Then if there's no forbidding of legislative of participation in it, then the door should be open for us to create some mechanism for that interaction to happen.
Okay, so
Also, Gary, just one other note about decision impact. If we're saying that 1309 was heavily used with dual credit, or 1409 heavily used with dual credit, and those TEKs were aligned for high school credit and college credit, by now combining 4 courses in 1305, then you may have misaligned the TEKs objective for high school credit. So in the process of that, we're not negating faculty as content and subject matter experts in this. I want that to be clear. But what we're saying is the decision impact of being able to do that is much far-reaching than any of the faculty may have been looking at based on instruction. So I too voiced the opinion of everyone on this committee. Communication is essential, and being able to get input about a decision impact, making sure that it's comprehensive, that before the coordinating board sets on this journey, or the board of the coordinating board, where you set them up for comments that'll be coming not only from the chancellors of the colleges that they wouldn't be aware of, because decisions are being made that could have impact on agreements and on enrollments, on all of these other things, based on the fact that we had faculty to make something on instruction instead of looking at that. And so I just want to.
Okay, and you know, Joyce, I understand your comments, and just as much if 1309/1409 was offered frequently and the TEKs were aligned and dual credit and all those kind of things, I bet the same is true for 1305.
But you changed 1305 to integrate all of the other courses
right,
in there. So therefore, the TEKs may not be aligned anymore.
And there is state law that says when a WECM course is changed, TEA is supposed to go back and look at the TEKs.
Then we need to make sure that has happened before we integrate and delete these courses.
Okay. Joyce, I understand what you're talking about. We're not going to resolve this today. You know, and the key thing is state law says after the course is changed. And historically, at the WECM workshops, last summer, did we do workshops last summer?
No.
Summer before last.
Summer before.
Summer before last, courses were changed, learning outcomes were added, all of these things were done independently without TEA being there. They were put in the WECM database, and any TEKs realignment and stuff like that happened after the fact. Correct? No. TEA had participated in the workshops last summer? Summer before last?
Gary,
No.
Gary, just to point out some clarity, the courses that were changed last summer were not changed so drastically that they would have impacted the TEKs. What you've just done here is that you've aligned some course and learning outcomes from 3 other courses into something. I'm just asking you to research to make sure that that did not have an impact and will not have an impact on dual credit. That's all I'm asking. I'm not trying to prove a point, I'm just asking for information. And I think that's what this committee is asking for, because the decision impact is far-reaching, more so than what we're talking about, whether it's a 1305 or 1309. If most of the dual credit courses were aligned with 1309, coordinating board would have that information. If 1305 has been changed, because you get dual credit reports. So if 1305 now was not aligned with dual credit, then 1309 was, and now you've combined it. I'm just asking for data and I'll yield the chair back. I'll yield the floor back to Cindy, who brought up the initial concern.
Well, I just wanted to say there are representatives from secondary on the POS committee, so I guess that could be a question that they're specifically asked, will this misalign the TEKs when changes are made? The other thing I wanted to say is that this is not an isolated process. A similar process occurs with fields of study and the ACGM committee, to where if any changes are made to courses that are in the ACGM by a field of study, then those ultimately are provided to the ACGM committee, not necessarily to, unless I'm wrong, I mean, this is the way the process used to work way back when the nursing field of study made a lot of additions to the ACGM, and it was more of a presented for information, not to vote on, not to change or anything, because the FOS committee has more of a say over the courses than the ACGM committee did. So it's a process that I think that's similar between a POS and WECM.
And I think, as I've shared, once we go through the process and those courses are to that point, we will present those.
We have a Olga wants to make a comment.
I would like to make a recommendation, just to tell this committee what is the process that you follow up. That's why I recommended to tell us what is the process for the next time.
Okay.
Jeff, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Gary, I can see my colleague's point here, but I also can see your point. It seems like we're trying to streamline this process, and this committee would like to be involved. However, wouldn't that slow it down for you guys? Because if you add another layer like us, wouldn't we have to then, okay, let's say you guys approve that, then we want to look at it. Now you're adding more time. It takes longer for this to be implemented. So would that mean we'd have to meet more often? Or something like that? Because to me, I would want to see something more dynamic. And I can see what you guys are doing. You're trying to do this quickly. Okay, let's get it done. Let's get it out. I understand. Now we're saying, well, wait a minute. Yeah, I understand what we're saying too. We need to, well, wait a minute. We need to back up. We need to look. But to me, it's like, wait a minute. They're trying to go forward. We're trying to see this, but at what point do we have to say, look, you know, if we want to do these things, we've got to be dynamic as a committee too and say, well, wait a minute, we see these changes. We can't wait another 4 more months till this happens. We've got to go forward on this. So I guess my concern is about time.
And you know, James, I would argue your word quickly, that we're not trying to do it quickly. We're trying to do it efficiently and effectively. But you know, I do agree that layering could be problematic. And, you know, while today we're talking about drafting courses, and I don't know how many of y'all are drafting experts in your background, you know, my personal background is computer science. Well,
Olga does.
And I said I didn't know how many, but, you know, as discussed, I believe we worked with somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 14 who gave us their recommendations. And so, yes, you know, a certain amount of layering. Now, you know, I do think there probably is a reasoned approach to make non-substantive changes to courses. And I don't really know what, I'm using the word non-substantive from a review process. I mean, I think we all know words like understand or not good words for learning outcomes. We wouldn't let something like that go into a learning outcome. You know, basic fundamentals, introductory drafting, you know, we wouldn't let that be a title. And so we kind of understand a lot of that kind of stuff. And you know, quite honestly, I almost wish I had it in front of me. I almost wish I had the 4 course descriptions of the 4 courses and whatever the word changes, inclusions, additions, subtractions, whatever it was, because I wonder if we've talked the last 30 minutes about 3 words or 1 learning outcome or what we've talked about, which I don't know that. But as Dwayne said, and I think Donna reiterated, and I you know, as we get further down the process, we will share it with you. Next meeting, perhaps we will try to get the courses from all of the committees that have met and try to find a way to summarize the information, and you can look at it. Ultimately, it will be public record. You know, and, you know, just like I talked about fundamentals 1 and 2 and procedures 1 and 2.
Once again, I don't think that this committee, any of the conversation that we've been having over the last half hour has been about stifling the process or restricting change. We're looking at it from the aspect of we're aware of how change can have an effect on a lot of colleges. And part of what we talked about earlier was our part in communicating out and providing that, that communication to the field. The best way that we're going to get communication and buy-in from the field is for us to be able to talk about it and be able to explain to our colleagues at other community colleges or within our colleges and our college community to say, hey, this is what's going on with programs of study, and be able to provide that feedback to them. And then we can give feedback back to you and to be able to help in the process. And I think that's Cindy's whole point.
Yes, and Gary, thank you for the response. Thank everyone for the conversation. Because it truly was just a question, not specifically about drafting or any other discipline. It was just a question about the process that the POS committees were going through as they made their curricular decisions or recommendations, rather. And that was the basis of my question, and it sparked a lively discussion, which is good. But the last thing I heard you say is that we would be provided with that information and that this is a dynamic, ongoing process of the POS. And so I appreciate that.
Thank you. And you know, if I can maybe make a follow-on comment, more of a rhetorical comment, if you will, the last 30 minutes worth of conversation. You know, if drafting courses would have been reviewed last summer, summer before last, or whenever, you know, pick a time, and recommendation would have been to change the learning outcomes of 1305 and 1309, both at the same time, you know, those would have been adopted. They would have been done. They would have been included in WECM without any real official committee like we have now. They would have been adopted. If the TEKs were misaligned, if dual credit was impacted, all of those things that y'all have suggested, they would have been the same factors, correct?
Right, but you had facilitators that were aware of the overall arching, that's what their role was, is to talk about the overarching impact on the rest of the state. That's the whole point of what the facilitator's role was.
And, you know, prior to me coming here in this role, I was a facilitator, and I was part of that leadership role, and I have participated in all the meetings and heard all the conversation and all the dialogue, and, you know, so we have just as much concern about the integrity of the courses and the databases as the legacy process.
Okay. Robin wanted to make a comment.
I just thought this might be helpful for everybody to consider, and as we know, rules can be interpreted as the occasion is, but I thought I'd read from the Texas Administrative Code the responsibility of this advisory committee and how it relates. Program of study is actually mentioned in this. So let me read these words, and that might help us all kind of come together on this. The Workforce Education Course Manual Advisory Committee is created to provide the board with advice and recommendations regarding content, structure, currency, and presentation of the Workforce Education Course Manual, WECM, and its courses, recommendations regarding field engagement and processes, maintenance and use of the WECM, and assistance in identifying new programs of study, developments within existing programs represented by courses in the manual, vertical and horizontal alignment of courses within programs, and obsolescence of programs of study and courses.
That's in the administrative code.
That's in the Texas Administrative Code.
As our responsibility.
So,
which is different than the ACGN.
Thank you. Is there any other comments?
Jeff, I have one.
Oh, Rob has a comment.
I've been listening a while, so it's
Certainly.
time for me
Please,
to say
we
something.
would love to hear it.
My notes reflect that, that the charge of the WECM process was to develop curriculum course revisions. Also, program of study charge is to develop curriculum and course alignment while revising courses that are in the WECM or using those courses as is. So from my notes, I knew that the course revisions were happening from the program of study. I do have a question just to confirm my understanding from last time. I understand that programs of study, that the colleges will not be required to adopt them. Is that correct?
Correct. There's not a requirement to adopt them in statute.
Okay.
And I guess go ahead, then maybe I'll make some additional comments.
Okay. So I knew that that was happening. I guess my primary concern too is that the timeline. I mean, South Plains College, we can adapt to any, and we've always adapted to. We've been part of the WECM revision process, and we'll adapt to the programs of study and the course revisions that are in the WECM. I need time to do that. So, did I understand that CAD courses are to be archived or they will be effective for fall 18? So they will not be eligible for funding of fall 18, or is that the following year?
I don't see, because with architecture and construction tentatively scheduled to meet in February, excuse me, we couldn't get it to the March, April board, and that would push it to the June, July board. And our basic operational discussion has been that anything, Donna, approved by the board by October, at the October board meeting, I think is what we decided, it would be effective the next fall. Anything after the October board meeting would be the next fall, a year removed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We understand CNI process. We're not going to make a course change and in July and say, you've got to adopt this in September. We understand that. And unless there is some kind of extreme, unforeseen issue that is important to keep us in compliance. I mean, I don't want to make it as a blanket. I don't know what would trigger such a hypothetical event, but we understand timing and a phase-in period.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I understood, will the CAD courses, because they'll affect us, our curriculum?
No, I do not foresee these courses. We're tentatively planning on getting the Architecture and Construction Career Cluster Committee back together February, right? February, March? Do we have it scheduled? Oh, where is that on here? February 9th. And so, we're already in the process of developing captions and stuff for the March, April board meeting. That's how far it takes to get the process, for us working. And so if this group meets on February 9th, and if they were approved to change the entire world, we couldn't get that to the board until June, July at the earliest. And then, so if the board approves them in July, we're not going to make them effective September 1 of 18 or anything like that.
Okay, so we're looking at fall 19. That'll give me a year and a half to make those adjustments.
Now we will put them in WECM and make them available, but then, archiving and stuff like that would happen a reasonable time removed. And as I said, and Donna, either nod your head or we're operating under that. If we approve it at the October board meeting, it's effective the next fall, and then if it's after October, it's the next fall, almost as I just said. So if you get to July of a given year, there's no way you can get it in your catalog. Well, maybe I shouldn't say no way, but it would be a whole lot of hurdles to get it in you already have students registered, all that kind of stuff. We understand all that stuff.
Okay, so my primary concern is we all need time to react appropriately. I guess my next concern is on the program of study. May have been my oversight. I did not understand that I could nominate faculty for the program of study to revise courses. If I would have known that, then I would have recommended or nominated faculty. I didn't know it. Maybe it was my oversight, but I didn't know it. I know it now, so when I see the nominations come out, then I'll know to do that.
But Rob, that's not the primary reason for participation on the program of study. It's to identify the courses that should comprise the...
Yeah, and I'm with you. I was thinking, Don, identify. I wasn't thinking about revising because I thought that was a whole separate process that did that.
And I think that's part of the concern of this group.
Right. And based on technical...
But now that I know, then we'll certainly be glad to be a part of it.
All right. Are there any other comments? Gary, what about actually, because we brought up that the administrative code does not restrict having membership from this committee on programs of study. What can we do as far as maybe getting membership on that committee so that we could help improve the communication?
Well, it's an open nomination process. So anybody that wants to nominate anybody at their college, I think we do talk about discipline. I will go back to Rex and talk if y'all want to participate in all the committees. I guess you can nominate yourselves to participate in all the committees, or maybe we can go through an appointment or a rotation or a roster or whatever. The statute does say something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, of committees composed of, and I'm pretty sure the last group that it talks about, it says other career and technical education experts. And so I think that we could, but I hate creating decisions on the fly in front of an open microphone. But, we can entertain the thought process. But I tell you, we're doing a lot of meetings.
And I guess the other point I want to make is that
Gary,
these are-
Robin has a comment.
I don't think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not thinking that we would necessarily want to serve on every program of study curriculum review, but I think a representative on the program of study advisory committee, the committee that comes up, this stuff comes up through, would be very important to have someone from here on that. That's what.
But there's ultimately going to be 16 of those committees. There's
No.
two.
No.
For the 16. Yes, for the main committee
Yes.
to represent it, but we
There's
don't
gonna
want
be-
it to be in the 16 because
There's
there
going
are
to
too
be,
many.
there's going to be 16 of those committees. There's one for health science, there's one for architecture.
There
and
isn't one like a WECM?
No, there's
I
not
thought that
one. I fault what.
One for each career cluster.
So there's one for each
I
group
tried to
cluster,
get
okay.
one large Uber committee, and
Okay.
I was.
Joe?
And I recognize, sir, that by law, there's some limitation to the populations and equal numbers, and I get those parameters. Is there anything that precludes an ex officio status?
Generally, our rules, if we're going to have ex officio members, we write those into the rules. And, I don't think the program and study rules have ex officio in them, so.
Do they preclude them?
Well, but because our general operational requirement from our general counsel is if we're going to have ex officios, we write them into the committees, then more or less our attorney precludes them is perhaps the best way to. And if Bill's listening, I will be glad to get his guidance related to that.
Right.
But, it's. We can take under advisement, and, I'll discuss with Rex. I'm not opposed. If y'all want to participate in each program and study subcommittee where they're looking at courses, as I said, we can look at getting a person on
Once
each one
again,
of
I'm
those.
not sure that it's really the subcommittee. It's more of the career, when you have each one of the career cluster meetings, that could be part of that process.
But the course revisions and discussions about that are occurring at the subcommittee level.
But when is the adoption happening? When is the approval of the adoption happening?
When the board approves it.
Well, but who submits it and where's it coming from?
The
Subcommittee recommends it to the advisory committee, and then the advisory committee
We're talking
recommends it
about
to.
That's what we're talking about, the advisory committee.
Right, and I guess the point I wanted to make is, these are open meetings, and so you're welcome to attend the meeting, and you can request voice at the meeting.
It's about the representation of the committee. It's not about attending the committee meeting. It's about having representation from this committee to be able to provide feedback.
And we would have to look at how we structure the rules on those, but we.
Okay, well, that's what I was asking on behalf of the committee, was to see if we could look at that. Joyce has a comment.
And I just, going back to Robin's information that she stated that was in the Texas Administrative Code as part of our role. And I'm just going to read this part. Assist in identifying new programs of study, developments within existing programs represented by courses in the manual, vertical and horizontal alignment of courses within programs, and obsolescence of programs of studies and courses. And in order for us to be able to adhere to the administrative code in that role, what we're saying is we want to be a part of the advisory council, because this is also part of our role that is written into the legislative rules that have come out of the administrative code. So that's all we're asking is there a possibility based on what's written in the administrative code that is part of our responsibility? And the only way we will know that is not listening as part of a public comment, but being as part of the advisory committee to make those recommendations.
And as I've said, I think 3 times now, we can discuss it. And just information for information's sake, to be on the subcommittee, on the committee, those are board appointment decisions. And so we would have to go through a nomination process. I don't know, maybe we could decide not to go through a nomination process on this. We've never done that before, but, you know, we could take that as a process. But then, as I kind of discussed our board timelines, you know, the next series of meetings for the career cluster groups are scheduled for February. The soonest we could discuss getting anybody seated on that committee would be after the April board meeting because of statute and the role of our board and that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, we're just asking if we can have that conversation.
Yes, sir.
So, well, is there any other comments? Oh, there's
But in the
Rhonda.
meantime, this is the last thing, but in the meantime, we can still have access to the conversations that are being had and any potential courses that are going to be changed, correct? Would that help?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Any other comments? Gary, on behalf of the entire committee, I would like to thank you for your time. Because of the fact that you gave us a timeline of noon, I think we ramped up the questioning as the comments came across. And so by you giving a deadline, we wanted to make sure that we met your deadline. And so I do appreciate you helping us out and providing your feedback. Is there any other comments at this point? I think that we will break for lunch and we'll come back at 12:45. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Our college is growing by leaps and bounds, adding advanced technology centers all over town to keep up with the growing demand for a skilled workforce. When you start close,
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue the meeting. And when we last stepped away, we were just finishing up with all the information from the coordinating board. And so we'll get into the subcommittee reports. We'll start off with WECM Protocol Subcommittee. And Robin Garrett, you were leading that up. So Robin, would you like to report out?
I sure will. First of all, I want to thank this committee for volunteering me to serve in my absence last time. I am honored by the confidence in that you've placed in me for leading this group. I had to get that fun mark in there. Okay.
We appreciate that.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. The group, the subcommittee reviewed the protocols and took many things into consideration, and it looks like, based on the conversation this morning, there's going to be more things to take into consideration when working on this protocol manual further. The first run-through of it was more of a, let's go through this and highlight the things that we know are going to have to be updated and changed or looked at, modified, just enhanced. And then we went through and we did things that were pretty obvious, like changing WLC, WECM Leadership Committee, to WECM Advisory Committee, or WAC, which we all had a kind of a chuckle with the WAC thing, but that looks very strange in there to me. As we went through it, we reduced and combined a few protocols because they were redundant, or it was more easy to make them one than to keep them separate. And again, these are just recommendations. Nothing is set in stone. It's out there for the committee to continue working on, and then we'll bring everything back to this advisory committee. We removed the information about the cycles or the timeline of course review, which was pretty obvious that that's no longer in play, and moved the wording to triggers. And we tried to incorporate triggers wherever necessary. We still need to decide on the models, because it was recommended by a meeting that I had about some guidance from Mr. Tomerlin, Mr. Hiller, and Rex Peoples, about some of the things that we needed to look at. And looking at the different models, we were asked to do that. So that hasn't been done yet. It's just highlighted in the document. And some of the roles that are part of the WECM process will need to be hashed out some more, even now more so with the information from this morning. A lot of the places that were highlighted were where the project manager of the project director was noted, and that was in the previous grant. We had a project director. I still am unclear, and so was the team, as to what aspects of the project director's role will now fall to the coordinating board versus this advisory committee. So those items remained highlighted without necessarily being totally answered in this document. So there's still a lot of questions in going through the protocol document that need to be answered. Some of the things that we can actually talk about for a little bit here and I could get some feedback is, for instance, well, this was more, I guess, about the project director, but who sets up and selects the courses to be reviewed? So I know these triggers are coming through, but when we have a lot of local needs or special topics, those are things that we've said, well, how is that going to happen? And again, what about that very dear to my heart, the special topics for continuing education, that protocol that was developed a few years ago? Those things are probably coming in like crazy, aren't they, Dwayne? And so at what point do those get reviewed, or they just live out there forever? So these are a lot of things that the smaller team is hashing a little bit, but the smaller team can't make those decisions. The WECM comments process. What involvement does this committee have in the WECM comments process? We mentioned that there were 6 that came through. Dwayne, do you need us to give you feedback? I mean, how do we want to do that? This is stuff that we need to know to be able to write our protocols correctly.
Right. I think we decided last meeting that when WECM comments come through, they will be forwarded to the entire advisory committee. And I think it'll be maybe give you a day or two for the committee members to make recommendations if they have any. And then it'll be either the chair, one of the chairs would be the official responder. And again,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how we decided that, the chair or vice chair or co-chair. If you're not sure, you need input from the rest of the committee or from the coordinating board, we can give you that input before you make the official response. But, and then I guess to clarify again from this morning, the comments we're talking about are ones that have come in like since January of this year. And so that's kind of partly saying how far behind I am, but it's just to say that these are not, they don't really require any action by this committee. It's more adding mirror courses, like CE mirror courses.
Right.
I'm sorry.
And I was not just to back up here, I was not aware that the chair or the co-chair or the vice chair would be making the final response on WECM comments.
Well, and again, that was, previously it was the program director of the grant
Right.
who did that. And
I would think that now that the coordinating board is in charge of the overall structure of it, that we would provide recommendations back to the coordinating board, and then the correspondence would go out from the coordinating board.
Yeah, and that, if that's the decision, we can certainly do that.
Okay. So I guess that might be something that we need to talk about.
Right. And
because I'm not familiar with that being a recommendation that was being moved forward.
Right, and again, hasn't been voiced before, but I guess like you said, it's just kind of as we're working through the protocols and determining the roles of the previous program director and program
Director.
manager.
The program director. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can certainly define the roles in the protocols.
Right. And that brings up not only the program director, but there are other actual roles in the whole WECM process that are they still going to be utilized? Or when we have a workshop, will we really have a facilitator? Or will that, I don't know how the programs of studies are done, or are we doing it differently? These are questions that going through the minute details of the protocols going, well, is that going to really change or not? So I really would appreciate this committee's input on whether we, on some of those topics, I guess, and how we go about making the recommendations for these changes.
Well, then maybe if I could ask all the committee to review protocols and provide feedback to you.
That'd be wonderful.
Okay. So
I'll send it out to the entire committee,
Okay,
or I'll get it to one of you to send out, because right now it's on a Dropbox where just the subcommittee members.
why don't you go
have
ahead
access to
and
it.
get it to Dwayne, and then
Okay.
Dwayne can get that sent out to the entire committee.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Dwayne, in the program of studies, subcommittees, when you bring the faculty and TA industry together, how is that facilitated? Is it a facilitated, where they have a facilitator? I mean, how is that process?
Not so much. We have the two co-chairs
Okay.
who are members of the advisory committee, and there are at least two members of each of the advisory committee on each subcommittee who serve as the chairs, and so they are basically the facilitators, the moderators, the things. And again, they're not the subject matter experts.
Right.
They're just the advisory committee members, and so they basically run that committee meeting. And then, of course, you have the coordinating board staff, usually myself and one or two other coordinating board staff at each subcommittee meeting to also.
So the participants then would not be called instructional specialists, because they would not be instructional people, because they would be industry people, TEA people, because they're not necessarily high school teachers. So what, they're just called subcommittee.
Most of them are faculty and either ISD or community college faculty
Okay.
on the committee.
We're just trying to get some names to
Right.
line this up. And so,
Curriculum stakeholder.
yeah. And then the other part of that, Dwayne, just kind of asking the question, what then would trigger a workshop? What would trigger a WECM workshop
Yeah, and
in this whole program study process?
I think, not sure about that. I guess we'll have to look into that.
And I'm just talking about it because that seems as though that the WECM Protocol Committee, if there is no because they're looking at triggers of what would trigger a revision process, as when Rob was talking, thinking that that process was a separate process for revisions, thinking about the WECM protocols as a process that has a trigger for a WECM workshop. So if there is no longer a trigger of that comes out of POS that would trigger a WECM process, then that protocol needs to be deleted from the WECM protocol.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking, and I think that's what this committee is asking. Then if the POS committee can say, well, we're revising the courses, we're deleting the courses, we're archiving the courses, they're effective immediately, we're changing the courses, and it does not trigger content specialist, or it doesn't trigger a WECM workshop anymore, then that protocol here is not necessary. And so I think that's why they're saying we need to see the process.
Right.
Because there is a written process over here. And that's why I think Rob was saying we assumed that there was a trigger that would come to a WECM workshop, that would trigger a WECM workshop if the program of study was making recommendations about a revision process.
Right.
But if that's no longer happening,
Well,
then it
that's,
impacts
I guess
that.
I'd defer to Joe's comment earlier. You know, we're still building this road, and so that's something we probably need to consider, make the road the best we can before we get too far down. So
Yeah.
that is something we will look into.
Yeah, because in Protocol 20101, which is the review of WECM courses, one of the, actually in the protocol beforehand, it wasn't even a modification from the subcommittee, the first one was program of study workshop recommendations. So if that's not going to be a trigger for a workshop, obviously, that will have to be removed.
Right.
Some of the
Well,
other
and
triggers.
Again, you say obviously, but it may not be that obviously. I mean, we might still be working on that model. I mean, working on as in developing that model.
Yeah, I'm just, based on the conversation we had earlier this morning, that's not going to be. However, I'm glad at this point in time we have a chance to have a discussion
Yes.
about that it could be.
Okay.
Yes, Rob.
As I think about that, and I'm a little bit confused, the old chicken and the egg thing, you know what I mean? So if a program of study, if they're aligning coursework and they're revising courses, they're in a WECM inventory, and then as I think about later on, let's say that there's a WECM process to revise those courses, and those courses are revised, then I'm thinking, well, won't the revision of those courses alter the original program of study? So we're back to the program of study that are aligning courses that's been revised by the WECM workshop, later. So I'm kind of thinking that all that should be one and the same. I'm not sure why it has to be separated.
We are too.
That's been,
That's what we're
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what, you're exactly
So,
right.
as I'm listening to you and just piecing logically, and my attempt is to logically piece things together. That's the only way I can understand it, if it has some kind of logic that goes along with it. So anyway, that's my perspective.
Right.
Thank you, Rob. Other comments? Okay. Thank you, Dwayne. Robin, are you?
Let me just look at my notes here, if there's anything else I wanted to bring up. I think that may be it. Again, there's tons of comments in this document. That's highlighted and comments down the side, and if you want to send them to me, I'll be sure and get them included into the main document for the subcommittee to review, and I appreciate your input. It's quite a task. I didn't realize how much of a task this was going to be.
Yeah. Having been on past in committees involved in WECM protocol, I can understand that concept.
Yes.
Do you have a? Would you like to put a deadline as far as that way you could get the feedback and know that you're at a certain point?
If I could get the feedback, well, let's see. When's our next?
Our next meeting is February 26th.
If I could get the feedback by mid-January or late January, we could have. I hope to have another subcommittee meeting right at the beginning of February.
Okay.
So if we could get that, then the subcommittee could review all of the comments and input.
Let's look
That'd
at
be
the-
great.
let's
And
look
with
at
the
the
holidays coming up and new semester starts, I'm sure it's going to be.
Let's look at the
big.
calendar. The 26th of January is a Friday.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
That sounds good.
Okay, we'll put a deadline of everybody providing feedback. Dwayne, can you get that out before the holidays? Sure. The document, okay. And you're gonna provide him the document.
Yes, I will
Okay.
send it to him.
Feedback to Robin by January 26th. Everybody clear on that? Thank you very much. Okay, anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
All right, very good. Yes, go ahead, Rob.
As we've been meeting with these two meetings, and I think the whole idea of, or at least my thought, for the WECM, the redevelopment of this WECM process was mainly financial. I think it's financial for the coordinating board, and I know it's financial for the college. Certainly was for me, trying to fund.
Correct.
We talked about that.
We did.
So if I'm going to be required to nominate faculty to the program of study committee, and then I'm also going to be required to nominate faculty to the WECM workshop process, whatever that looks like in the future, I'm not sure where the financial savings, the financial efficiencies are. So just something to keep in mind. I think it was all revolving, everything revolves around money. We know that.
Right.
So I think we just need to keep that in mind as we move forward.
Okay. Thank you for the comments. Rhonda?
We're in the 21st century, so I'm just wondering, we're from all across the state, and Linda's called in today, so it seems like we could call into a POS meeting, or someone could call in of interest to. Is that not a doable option? Dwayne, I'm just curious. I mean, is there a limit on the number of people who can call in, or
Yeah, like I say, I have to look at the procedures because, since they are open meetings, we do invite people to attend. I'm not sure what the procedure is for having call-in.
Okay.
People calling.
Just to reiterate, I think some of the concern of the committee, and I'm speaking on behalf of the committee right now, is I think that they felt that it should be a position that's recognized as an important position, not just as an observer, so that we could provide guidance from the WECM standpoint.
Well, and I'm even talking about us. We're scheduled to meet 4 times a year in your term, or over 2 years. What if a point of a POS came up and we needed to, as long as you had a quorum, that called in and had a web meeting and to discuss whatever they just, instead of waiting that 4 times a year, that would
Right.
get some involvement.
Right.
And I guess what I'm saying is, we do have those capabilities and we do have that technology, but we're kind of limited by our open meetings requirements, that people have to be visible and things like that. So again, that's something I have to look into, but we're kind of our hands are kind of tied on what we can allow, which of the available technological advances we can allow in our current structure.
Okay. Robin, you had a comment?
And also to address, Rob, one of the models actually is a virtual meeting model for WECM as well, for financial, the financial aspect of getting the faculty together. So, I mean, that would help if we did more of those.
All right. Other comments? No? All right, very good. Speaking of Linda, she can't get in?
She did send an email. She sent an email of what she can't get in.
Okay. She can't get in.
So she sent it.
Sorry.
Do we want to check on that to see if there's something on this end, or?
Well, someone else can report out.
Yeah. Does someone else have the information to report out?
She sent in an email, guys. Committee members.
It was Linda, Joe.
Cynthia, Elaine, Rhonda. We have the email. She just sent them. Joe's gonna report it.
Okay, so Joe's going to report out? Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Technology, right?
I think we've got it. I think we've got the situation covered with Joe. Okay. Thank you for sending that, Linda, if you're listening.
She wants to.
Could you let her know Joe's on?
Okay, I'll just watch it online.
Yeah.
On there.
Due to technical difficulties, we're taking a minor break. I'm ready. I'm waiting for Dwayne because he went back behind the curtain.
Behind the mirror.
The Grand Wizard is back there behind the curtain. Yeah, go ahead, Joe. Why don't you get started with things, and then if we can get Linda back online, then we'll have Linda make comments as well.
In the committee work, we've tried to distill this down. We have 2 items. Let me read through one of them, and if folks have comments, then I'll read through the other, okay?
Okay.
All right. The first comment we looked at revolved around the guided pathways concepts. We feel that there's a need for a clarity of definition and purpose. We think that is using state and local community college programs of study. The teams are creating program advising maps to ensure the potential students get started on the right path and carry through to a completion agenda. The program advising maps include things like TSI, if there's a need for developmental ed required to it, required first-year experience, and other courses that would support the student as they move into these programs of study. Now, please realize that last verbiage was sort of ours, because when we look at it, we're like, okay, so where does this program of study pathways interface happen?
Okay.
And that's the first issue we wrestled with.
Any comment from the committee on that?
I'm so sorry. There's also a note that the committee worked with the Texas Success Center to get a more clear definition, along with, of course, Gary Tomerlin in the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so stepping away from the interface question, the next one we had focused more on the programs of studies. And that's getting a definition of their purpose as separated from pathways. Again, we tend to think of it as working directly with industry representatives across all areas of the state and sizes of business as diverse as possible to create the awards, level 1s, 2s, associates, whatever else is appropriate. CE certificates to train or educate the community for the job posts and the futures. A question that we have is, have the POS council report programs drafts, could those get sent to the WECM group here prior to be considered as final? And I think that was part of the discussion that we had earlier.
I think we talked at nauseum about that. So I think we did cover that aspect of the topic, and I think the coordinating board understands our position on that, and so I think we do have a clear direction on what we would like to see moving forward as we build that road, as you talked about earlier. Any other comments on the second part of that?
I have a comment. I
Yes,
think so.
yes, Olga.
The ruling pathways, that's the way I understand, is to have the students to ensure they are in the right track, number one. They are not taking any single course is outside to the field of study or the program, etc. And at the same time, to be aligned with the industry needs. This is a pathway, because we have tried to make the students to be successful in the workplace, or for those that they wanted to look at to be a transfer students. That's his pathway. And then if you wanted to call the new initiative for all the pathways model national-wise, is to have stackable credentials, certification level 1, level 2, and associate degree or applied science degree, including industry certifications. That's what is a pathway.
And that's the perspective that we have to it, but in looking around, we're trying to find, is that our perspective, or is that the intent by design? Because we talk about pathways, and pathways are sort of running around, moving down its evolutionary cycle, and now programs of study are moving down theirs, and we just want to make sure there's connective tissue between the two.
It has to. It has to be, because then, as educators, we are not provided the actual tools that they needed, because we don't want the student to be with us for 4 or 5 years finishing an associate degree.
Absolutely
It has
correct.
to be.
We agree with that. Our concern was making sure that the mechanisms exist to make that communication happen.
It's going to be hard.
Yes.
It's going to be hard from all the community college, start for admissions, counseling, everybody. Yes, it's going to be hard, because we don't have this habit in United States. And I said in United States, because in Italy, when I went to Italy to the school, we follow pathways. When I was in Mexico, I follow pathways.
Right.
Except in United States, I don't know why. We are different.
And one of the things that we've noticed, too, is how the term pathways is being implemented in a diversity of ways across the colleges. So in one place, you've got this huge diversity kind of thing, but then we've got programs of study that's sort of focusing down tight. It seems like the two should go together, but there seems to be an inherent difference between them, and I think that's what the call is for, is that there be something that keeps a connective tissue there.
Okay. Other comments?
Mr.
Cindy?
One other comment along with the programs of study is that as I was looking at one of the frameworks, Dwayne, that came from the coordinating board, there's an area on there that says general education recommended for POS as appropriate. And so as a part of our Pathways work, most of us are looking at and being called upon to look at each individual cluster and find some key courses that would move into a number of different programs. And so are these program of study committees looking at that as far as the entire cluster?
Yeah, for the most part, they're not really recommending general education courses. There might be some in the health professions that will recommend maybe anatomy and physiology, as all students in taking health sciences will probably take that anatomy and physiology. But the problem is sometimes they'll take the academic course, and sometimes they might take, if there's a WECM, a specific course. So it's, for the most part, they haven't been recommending general education courses.
Okay, thank you.
But if we are recommending general education courses, how we are making the students to be successful and that reach their goals?
And again, to clarify, they don't
Right.
recommend
They don't recommend.
specific courses. I mean,
Okay.
all colleges can choose whichever
Yeah,
courses
whatever they want.
they
Okay.
want to offer.
This is where we need to get the four-year colleges and universities involved because they all take different things. And so this is a huge problem for us when our students are going for bachelor's degrees from our AAS programs.
Right, and
So,
yeah, along those lines, we usually recommend that you include core curriculum courses as the general ed, if you can, but,
Right, but if we standardize, that may help
right.
student through the process. Because right now, it's kind of crazy.
Yes.
Okay. Other comments from the group? No?
I have one.
Oh, yes, Joyce?
Chair. Dwayne, what I think the committee is recommending is that as the coordinating board looks at programs of study, the consideration of looking at what is also happening at the community colleges on a statewide level for guided pathways. And that we can't do those two things in silo, simply because if the program of study is establishing courses that are going to be specific for a particular program, and the colleges are designing pathways that are going to be inclusive of those programs of study, then the guided pathways that we're putting people on, if those program study courses are changing within those pathways, it's going to impact the pathways. So that's, again, another reason that you can't do programs of study in isolation of communication, because the whole state system of community colleges are moving down this road of guided pathways. And we have no choice, if it's CTE programs, but to include programs of study that are part of those pathways.
Do we know the coordinating board's participation in the Texas Pathways conferences and meetings?
If you do, you're one step ahead of me, because I sure don't.
Because
mean,
I've
I
been
know-
to Pathways meetings and haven't seen the coordinating board there, so that might be something that the coordinating board would want to be involved with.
Right.
Yeah, and that would probably be a recommendation on the part of this committee.
Because I'm worried about heating and ventilation and electrical. This one is a perfect pathway, but now that it's going to be a program to the study, how is going to be the pathway?
Right.
Right?
And we usually build our degrees up, not backwards. You know, we build them based on credentials. So if an employer says that they only need this skills, these skills, we build a certificate level 1 so that they can go directly into employment. But we also build it where they can onboard to go on up to an associate's of applied science degree as well. So if you're building programs of study backwards where you're building toward the AAS, we are already building from here on guided pathways up. So it's going to encompass that. So that's why it is important, as you all are discussing programs of study, that you understand the guided pathways and how they will connect.
Okay.
Other comments on the guided pathways and the integration with programs of study?
I mean, just to say that having gone to that meeting in San Antonio a few weeks ago, we did spend a lot of time looking at those our pathways and the micro-credentialing, even a component of boiling those our level 1 certificates down to when a student may get maybe an MS, an Office certification or a QuickBooks certification, and badging them or giving them a micro-credentialing. So in those work that you do with the programs of study, it would seem by having industry at the table, they can certainly inform us to that and being able to feed in there. So there are some logical, I think, some marriages that could happen and help inform the process on the programs of study that we need to certainly capitalize, because typically it's sometimes hard to get industry to come to the table. If we get them in that form, man, that would be a great opportunity to leverage that.
Excellent comment. Thanks, Frank.
And
Rhonda?
Dwayne, this is not new to you, but you know how we have those certificates built for life happens, student exit point,
Yes.
the end of the first semester. So we certainly wouldn't want to eliminate that option either.
Right, and we've always had, that stackable model
Right.
of, level 1 to level 2 to associate degree. And so none of that has changed.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have any further work that we need to do between now and the next meeting on this portion of it? It sounds like we do.
Yeah.
So do you have some suggestions as far as?
If all eyes turn this way, the personal answer I've got to give you is no, I really don't. And part of the issue is because we see these things as both valuable, both having purpose, and frankly, both sort of heading in the same direction, but general direction doesn't mean on same course. And your point's well taken, as Frank had mentioned, that if there's a way to get everybody in on this process at the same time, great. That may address one of James' concerns about not adding just another layer of something. But the layer of something may have value to it if we're addressing those unintended consequences that may show up if we make decisions in isolation. Okay, all of that sounded good, except now it comes right back to your question of how do we do that? And I'm not sure. I don't have that wisdom.
Okay.
I think so we can start with a better communication. That's the big point. That's it. And then we go from there.
I would agree that the communication is a key component of this. One thing that came up during part of this earlier discussion, is there any other comments on that, by the way? I'm sorry. Cindy?
Jeff, in thinking of that, I mean, obviously Cynthia Farrell with Texas Success Center is leading the charge in Texas for Guided Pathways.
Okay.
And coordinating board representative, whether that's Gary or whoever is the appropriate person. And I'd hate to continue to nod my head in your direction, but you as the chair of this committee, it would seem, would need to be a person that would be a part of that discussion.
Right.
So those are the three that I can think of immediately.
Okay.
I'm sure that there are many others that should be involved in that, but those are the three I'd think of first.
Thank you. Other comments? And I'll include Linda because she's been leading up this committee as well, so, okay. Very good. Part of the discussion that we had earlier, I think something that came out of that nice interaction that we had with Gary earlier and the rest of the group from the coordinating board was that maybe we need to look at how we proactively get involved in programs of study from this committee, because right now we don't have a process for how that's going to happen. And so how do we proactively get involved on programs of study committee? And do we have individuals right now that will say, yeah, I'll be more than happy to participate, whether it be by phone, webinar, whether, and Dwayne said that they would look at all of that, or in person, with the advisory committee as we're going through this part of the process. So I wanted to put that out on the table for discussion. Yes, Robin?
As I kind of thought about and mentioned to you, since, and I don't know how many of the clusters are active at this point, Dwayne, but there's more of us than there are the 16 clusters anyway. Could we possibly assign someone to be at that next meeting? Because we can't get it legislatively done or from the board, the coordinating board authorized as a member. But if we could at least have someone there as, not to be able to speak, but to at least bring the feedback back to the group, if you could let us know, Dwayne, and I'm just making some assumptions here, of what the next ones are, we could assign somebody from this team. That's my recommendation, to at least go.
I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Yeah, I'd like to see everyone involved in 1 or 2 meetings so we can come back and discuss this and see how we feel about it as a group. Otherwise, it's going to be one person working with one, and we're not going to have the cohesion we need to bring whatever we
That is a good idea.
forward. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good idea. So maybe we have like a small subcommittee,
Yes.
because we've got, right now, so few clusters, and we could basically have a small subcommittee that would, so who would like to lead a small subcommittee for, there's what, two right now, the architecture and the health science?
Right.
So do I have somebody that would like to lead a subcommittee?
Mr. Chair, not volunteering to that question.
Oh,
though.
boy, I thought I
Sorry.
had my volunteer there.
No. I like the previous recommendation, somebody ought to be there, but might I say 2 things and just offer them as suggestions. One is, we have tried in when we had the facilitators to basically make sure the facilitator was a bit neutral in the process. I mean, I facilitated course sets about which I really had no knowledge, and that was good because my idea was to remain neutral.
Right.
But in this case, I think we need to send intelligence. So more than just a volunteer, someone of us who is attached to, understands, recognizes, has some understanding of what that group's talking about. For example, I would have been useless in any discussion about drafting, but clearly Olga. Okay. And I think all of us come from some different background sets. So rather than just open anybody volunteering, maybe there needs to be a little consideration of that person needs to really have some insight into what's going on in that thing. The second, since we're going to these events and clearly our official status is a bit in question, a question I would have is, as in this committee meeting, is there an availability of public comment at those?
Dwayne, can you provide feedback on that? As far as part of the program of study advisory committee, is there a public comment period?
An open meeting.
I don't know, I feel like I've been saying this all morning. Like, in today's agenda, for today's meeting, number 3, public
Right.
testimony on agenda items, that appears on every advisory committee meeting agenda.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Then my question would be, at that moment, would that be an appropriate place for whoever our representative is to introduce themselves, explain who we're about, a brief, maybe even can, so everybody says the same thing, but then step back, because again, our official presence is not quite gelled yet, but it would at least provide that knowledge base to them and that contact point for them, and they may or may not know who we are and what we're about and our concern.
Good comments.
Thank you.
Eileen?
I wouldn't mind volunteering. I'm a physical therapist, so I could do healthcare. I'm also a state licensed general contractor in Florida, so I know all about construction and all of that. So
Now
I'd
that's
be
a
glad.
man of many hats.
A woman of many hats.
Excuse me. Excuse me. You're correct. That was my mistake.
But yeah, it just runs in the family. But
Good for you.
Yeah, so yeah, I would be glad to do that because I think I could address all those issues and.
Would someone else like to participate?
We know when the next meetings are. I'll volunteer for the health sciences.
Okay.
As Joe said, you need someone with expertise. I think I can bring that to the table, so I will. But I'm not sure I know when the meetings are, so if some point we could kind of outline that, that would be great.
I was going to say, can we get a schedule, Dwayne?
Yeah, Architecture and Construction Advisory Committee will be meeting on February 9th. And the Health Sciences is tentatively scheduled for February 13th.
Okay, great.
And that meeting starts at what time?
They generally go from 10 to 2:30.
Oh, same as these, okay.
And again, check the CB website for the final, I mean, they'll be published in the Texas Register also, so to verify the final dates, but.
Is
those
that
are-
February 13th again for the health science?
That's right.
Okay, okay, thank you.
And again, that's tentative.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
building on that, for all of us who have been on the WECM Advisory Committee for a number of years and have been facilitators, we were required to go through training for that.
Correct.
But I know that we still have PowerPoints and available information, and I
Correct.
would just recommend that whoever is going to be going and participating, that if they've not had an opportunity to look at that material,
facilitator training?
that be available to them, to where they have some background information in addition to their content and expertise. And Dwayne, if I could ask one question, I tried to watch actually, and tried to get my faculty member that was content expert for drafting to watch what was going on with POS. It was not televised. We could hear audio, but it was not televised. So are they normally televised?
Yeah, they normally are webcast, and I'll have to maybe double check and see, but as far as I know, they are all archived as webcasts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Dwayne, could you get those facilitator training? If I sent those to you, could you get that out to the entire group?
Sure.
Okay. I'll get that out. I'll send that out to you. Other comments on that? So we have Eileen and Philip that have agreed to be in the health science area. And Olga, did you want to volunteer?
Okay, let's go to the, okay.
Maybe I just voluntold you. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, you did.
I did? Okay.
I'd like to sit on both so I can get a perspective on both.
Okay. Who else would like to participate with the rest of the individuals?
Jeff, I'll sit in on the architecture and construction as well.
Okay, Dwayne? Anyone else? All right. We've got a couple of people for health science and looks like 3 people for the architecture and construction. All right. Very good. See here. One thing that, yeah, we can just get into the end of the agenda. One thing that I did want to mention, Dwayne, let's go ahead and add an agenda item to the future meetings on program of study update. So let's get that in there as far as advisory committee updates for the various clusters, and have that as a standing agenda item. Any other agenda items that we can think of at this moment after this conversation that we had today that we feel that should be added? Yes, Joyce?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add to the February 26th meeting to make sure, since Dr. Tomlin said that he was going to provide information on the existing course inventory for the baccalaureate program. I know he said it's listed as a unique need and we can go on that, but I'd like for us to have another update on the baccalaureate program.
Did you get that, Dwayne?
Yes.
Okay. And maybe even you could do a little tutorial as far as show us exactly where that's at, and we could do a demonstration so it could be webcast out to all the individuals.
Right, as long as she can.
Yeah. So
So that'll be good to
that
show
would be
it
good.
at the
Yeah.
February meeting.
Other items?
You spoke about the McDonald's initiative, so maybe we can hear what's going on with that.
McDonald's initiative, okay.
I have a quick question concerning future program of studies outside of the health science and architecture construction. Dwayne, is there any type of estimated timeline when there'll be other programs of studies that would be nominated, be requesting for nominations? Do you know any timeline on those?
We don't have timeline yet for those.
Okay, are any, let's say, any areas of those studies, no timeline of what they'll be or
I
when?
mean, we're looking at, the next, trying to decide what the next cluster, as Gary mentioned before, we're trying to look at what the next cluster will be to look at. And then from there, we'll develop the timeline
Okay,
for the nominations.
And the email nominations will just come out?
Right, the same way it'll
the
be sent
coordinating
out to
board
the
of all community
VPIs and
colleges.
the liaisons to every college.
Yeah. I just want to be able to know to watch out for those, and know that they're coming and we would like to participate.
Okay, very good. Very good, thank you, Rob. Did you get the McDonald's initiative as far as an update on that? We'll add that to the agenda. We've almost built another whole agenda already, so that's a good thing.
One more question. if you
And
don't
then,
mind, sir.
Robin, you're going to give an update on protocols, and then we'll also give an update on pathways, so the team that's working on pathways, and then also myself with Gary and
Cynthia Farrell.
Cynthia Farrell, yeah, that's it. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Olga?
And the process that we request.
POS process.
POS process, an update on the POS process, okay.
And if the coordinating board identifies that timeline or whatever next areas to be studied, could we have an announcement or something like that at the next meeting? If you figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big if, but yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dwayne.
Thank you, Dwayne. Other items?
I just want to make sure for the February 9th and 13th meetings, will we be sent a link to people on those subcommittees for the attending the, well, not the subcommittee, but attending the program of study meetings? Will we get the information from you about what time and is it 10 o'clock?
10 to 2:30.
Oh,
the same
10 to
time that we
2:30.
have it.
And it'll be here.
And it's
It'll
going
be
to
here. Oh, okay. Okay. So we'll come in person.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other comments? All right. Let's talk about a June meeting date. We have a February meeting date set already for the February 26th. Why don't we take a quick look at calendars?
You might,
Yes?
if you have a copy of the minutes, I don't have a copy in front of me, but check the last item in the last minutes.
Oh, did we already,
Yeah, we had a June.
did we already set a June date?
It's May 31st.
Okay,
Right.
it's,
Our
and like I
June
said, it's
meeting-
May 31st?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a second meeting set up for May 31st. Wonderful.
Which is really good.
That is good.
So I guess the question, do we want to set up the next, we usually go 2 meetings ahead. Do we want to set one for August or September?
Group?
Or we can wait till
Or do we,
February?
I think we could wait until February.
I think we can wait
Yeah,
Okay.
February.
I think we could wait until February.
Okay.
Yes. Anything else for the good of the cause? None? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I didn't think so. We'll call this meeting at 1:40. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending today, and thank you for the very good discussion. Have a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Okay, I wanted to. Yeah, I mean, she sent me a list of